Welcome to this week's episode of the Inside Kingston Podcast, where experienced professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders based in Kingston upon Thames are invited on to share their story with us. I'm your host, Amir Rochalina.
This week's episode of the Inside Kingston Podcast is brought to you by Holland Harnham Wills, a financial planning and wealth management firm based in Kingston upon Thames. Holland Harnham Wills specialises in retirement planning for senior professionals and successful business owners. Visit hhw-uk.com to start feeling more relaxed and confident about your financial future.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Inside Kingston Podcast. I'm joined today by Vanessa Bailey. Vanessa is an actor and the founder of 9 Yards Films, an award-winning filmmaking company that creates media that resonates, engages, and inspires. What's unique about Vanessa is how she pivoted in her career as a primary school teacher to following her dreams, persevering throughout her life to create the opportunities that have led her to where she is today. And be sure to listen to the end, where Vanessa shares some tips on how to tell your company's story in a way that will stick with your customers. So whether you're interested in knowing more about filmmaking and storytelling, or would like to know more about what it takes to run a successful independent business, then I hope you enjoy this episode of the Inside Kingston Podcast. Welcome, Vanessa Bailey, to the Inside Kingston Podcast. Vanessa, I'm really excited about this conversation because, well, I've always been fascinated by filmmaking, and in particular, the power of film in this social media world that we live in. So I think our listeners can learn a lot from your expertise in this area. But to kick off this conversation, I'd like to go back in time, if that's okay. So Vanessa, where did you grow up?
Good question. So I'm from Bristol. Born and bred in Bristol. I started off in an area called Fishponds and ended up in an area called Henleys. So that's where I was educated. All my schooling was there. So yes, I'm a Bristol girl. Yes.
Bristol's a bit of a film powerhouse as well, with Wallace and Gromit and
yes, exactly.
Closer to my heart, Shaun the Sheep.
Yeah, and all the Doctor Who and Casualty and Holby and all of that all sort of started off there. So yeah, it was very active when I was in Bristol.
Yeah. And did you go to university? And if so, what did you study?
I did. I went to Durham University. I was meant to go to York University to study music, but I fell in love. And so my husband already had a place at Durham. So I decided I wanted to follow him instead of studying what I was meant to be studying. So I enrolled in a teaching degree at Durham. And followed him there, and so I ended up qualified as a teacher, which is what I meant to be doing. So yes, I did go to Durham.
Oh, that's fascinating.
By default.
And could you tell us a little bit about your career journey before you set up your business?
Yeah. So as I say, I was a primary school teacher for a few years, and then when I had my children, I've got 3. When they were all in school, I decided I wanted to move away from teaching and try what I'd always wanted to do, but never quite had the guts to do, which was acting. So I didn't have the money or the time to go to drama school. I decided to try and sort of find a way in. And I ended up working as an extra on Casualty. At that time, I was still living in Bristol. And kind of built up connections and got lines here and there, and ended up being able to apply to an agent in London.
Wow.
And blagged my way into getting an agent, and so my acting then became fully professional, and I concentrated on that for a while. And then I got a little bit restless with just waiting for parts to come to me, so I started writing. Again, with no formal training. I'm very much a believer in creating opportunity rather than waiting for it to sort of land in your lap, because that very rarely happens. So I started screenwriting. I then decided to produce some films myself, working with people in the industry who were camera people or, various heads of department. We started making films together. They won some awards. And then that gradually grew into me then directing and then forming 9 Yards, our film production company. So it was a very unorthodox, but actually increasingly more common way to get into filmmaking, I think, now.
That's fascinating, Vanessa. And there's definitely quite a bit in that I want to unpick throughout this conversation. So bringing this conversation a little bit to the present, could you tell us about your business today?
Yeah, so it's we're seasoned industry professionals, but the business is fairly new. I think we've been now sort of about 6 months. We've been working, Judy Goldberg, who is a producer who started off in Hollywood, working on things like the Resident Evil franchise.
Wow.
Don't let that put you off, anyone.
Fantastic.
We don't just make horror. So she started off, in Hollywood, and making music videos and stuff like that. I've come from the independent film sector, so very experienced in that. And we decided to pool our resources as a kind of multifaceted, because we have quite multifaceted skill sets, and just bring all the sort of beauty and lusciousness and resonance and artistry of film to the corporate and branding world, because I think there's something very lovely about seeing a particularly gorgeous brand film that makes the audience lean in, as opposed to just going, oh, it's another brand film, it's another corporate video. So that was our passion, was, as well as we have a slate of film projects which we have in development as well, we're very excited to be able to offer that level of service to companies and small businesses with the team that we have access to. So that's where we are at the moment. Yes, yeah. It's very exciting.
It is super exciting. And Vanessa, this is definitely one of the reasons why I was so keen to chat with you. And it was great when you reached out on Instagram, because the storytelling element of what you've just said there, I think is so important. So as I was saying to you before we started recording, one of the reasons why I set up the Inside Kingston podcast was to give people in the local community a platform to tell their story. Now, of course, given that storytelling is so integral to filmmaking, are there any tips that you can share with us which could help people in telling their story, be it their story as a professional or their business story, in the sort of vein that you've described earlier?
Yeah, I think the thing about story is you have to. I mentioned it earlier. You have to make the audience lean in rather than shouting stuff at them. So with every story, there's a feeling that you want people to experience, which will resonate much more deeply and for a much longer time than just imparting information. And I think a lot of the mistakes that are made, and particularly I think in the more corporate end, is that people just think it's enough to tell people stuff. But what you want to make them do is feel a particular way about your company that will make them want to come back for more. So I would say, thinking about it in terms of what are the feelings that you want your potential clients to be experiencing when they're connecting with you, that will be something that they'll want to feel more of, be it confidence, safety, whatever the product is that you're selling. It's thinking about how can you engage with them on an emotional level. I don't mean sentimental, I mean emotional, because emotions last a lot longer than facts do in our kind of psyche. I think that would be my top tip. And there are lots of ways of doing that, lots of creative ways of doing that.
Could you share with us some thoughts on how you think local businesses could use film to tell their story and potentially even attract more customers?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that's really good when you're looking for someone to tell your brand story for you is to look for something that offers it's that X factor. So it's the difference between, this is going to sound a bit technical, it's the difference between a videographer and a cinematographer. So a videographer is someone who records stuff with a camera.
Mm-hmm.
A cinematographer is someone who tells a story with a camera. And there is a very big difference. They're experts at lighting, they're experts at conveying the narrative that's happening as opposed to recording the action. So one of the things you want to look for when you're looking for a company is, does it make you go, ooh, when you see their work? And that sounds really simplistic, but it actually is as simple as that. If you watch something that someone's made and you're like, yeah, I understand what that company is about, that's all well and good. But if you watch something and you think, I'd like to watch more of that, then that's what you need to aim for. And I think creating something that, for example, if you're doing an interview with someone and they're sat in a chair and they're saying something, that's great. And a lot of people will just, film a guy sat in a chair telling you stuff. What a good cinematographer and branding company will do is they will say, right, the guy sat in the chair. Does he look beautiful? Is the lighting amazing? Is he sat up conveying power? It's all those little details that filmmakers who are experienced with a bigger film set are always looking for. Does it convey power? Does the lighting convey whatever it is you want to convey? Is that conveyed in every element of the setup? And they're very, very skilled at looking at the tiniest detail, because we understand that everything about the media that you're putting out will convey a message, whether it's what you want to convey or not. So you need to make sure that everything about your media is conveying the right message.
For our listeners who are hearing this and are trying to imagine an example of it, I would invite you to check out Vanessa's short film called Bus Stop. So Vanessa, I only saw the trailer of that, which is about 35 seconds. And I think in 35 seconds, people will get exactly what you are talking about there. In fact, without words, just by being observant of your acting, which is phenomenal, and also your acting partner, just by seeing how the scene develops and gets you on the edge of your seat thinking, I would like to know more. I think you're absolutely right. If businesses think about that with their branding, they're already on the front foot, aren't they?
Well, thank you. And yes, that's a very good example, particularly as that bus stop, for example, isn't a real bus stop. So that's where I'm saying that even the tiniest details. So we had a production designer who we hired an old bus stop from a prop hire company. And then the production designer basically created a bus stop which reflected exactly what we wanted that scenario to express: the graffiti, the colors, all of that. So the non-verbal, it's that old adage of show not tell, which I think is underestimated in business branding, and it's incredibly powerful. You don't need words necessarily to make your audience lean in, but thank you. I was very lucky to have an incredible team working on that one. Yes.
And on that theme of short movies, I know that you and your company have been responsible for producing, writing directly quite a number of these. And I understand that you're currently producing a movie, some of which was actually shot here in Kingston. Could you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yes. So we've got The Long Walk Home, which is in the final stages of post-production. So we're just locking down the score. And then we need to do two other things, the grade and the sound mix, and then that will be finished. And that we shot in Kingston and Richmond. And I did that very deliberately because I've been here 3 years now, and I love where we live, and I very much want to showcase the locality as something which has a very strong story to tell and can be used by other filmmakers. I know it's used a lot by some bigger filmmakers, but I would love to see more small-scale productions using the area, because it's got so much to offer. So we shot The Long Walk Home on the river. We created a nightclub in Duke Street Church in Richmond, in their cafe. We converted that into a nightclub. There is a teaser trailer that people can see, and you'll see lots of pink and purple flashing lights, and you won't realise it's a church cafe. And then someone's house we used in Teddington as well. So it was lovely to be able to use the local area for that particular story. And then we've got another one which we're in the middle of shooting, because we got lockdown in the middle of the shoot, so we've only shot part of it, and that's a very different short film. The Long Walk Home looks at family dynamics and rebellion and redemption, the sort of themes of that. And then Small Talk is looking at mental health in men, which I'm very interested in, because men are bad at talking to each other about their feelings and their own sort of mental health. And I was very interested in exploring that through a character-driven narrative drama. And so we started shooting that in Teddington. And so now we're looking at how we can move back into production with that, which is looking very doable, actually, because it's a very small crew. So we're definitely able to do that within the sort of social distancing guidelines that we've been given. So yes, that will be again in shot in this area, which I'm very proud of, because it's going to be two beautiful little films, actually. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And Vanessa, for the benefit of our listeners, I'll make sure that I add links to those resources on the show notes. Where could people go to find out more about the movie? And also, where could people see these movies?
So Bus Stop isn't online at the moment because it's out in film festivals. Mm-hmm. But there is the trailer up. The Long Walk Home, what I tend to do is, if people are following our social media or looking on our website for updates, looking at our Twitter is the best way to see updates, and then we'll let people know when the films are available to watch online. With all of them, we tend to do a premiere. We always do a premiere. So there will be a premiere for The Long Walk Home. I'm very much hoping that by the time it's finished, we'll be at a point where we can do something physical in a cinema. I would love to be able to screen it in a Richmond or Kingston cinema, a local cinema. So do just keep your eyes peeled around our social media, because that's where the updates will be going up.
Vanessa, what are some of the key business lessons you've learned throughout your life?
Oh dear. Do you know, the biggest lesson I've learned is that people are your most precious resource and need to be treated as such. So in terms of when my team, I think one of the things that is incredibly important to me is to respect their talent, to respect their creative voice, and to see everything as a collaboration. So I'm not so concerned with what I think is right that I'm forgetting to listen to other people and missing their genius. I think that's been one of the things I've learned very quickly, and is a very good lesson to take on board. And in terms of working with our clients, I think it's the same thing. It's very important to listen to them. And it's also very important to understand what they want, so that you can understand how then you can bring that extra little bit of something to their vision. And it's really about communication with every area of business, I think, because once you've got the sort of foundations of communication absolutely nailed, you can then build on a very secure foundation. But if you haven't got the communication sorted, then you're just setting up problems for yourself further down the line. So I think communication is absolutely paramount. And then what I do pride myself on is an absolutely ferocious, relentless work ethic. I will not stop until I've got the absolute best that I can produce, whether it's for myself or other people. So hard work and a good pair of ears, I think.
That'll take you a long way in life for sure.
Yes.
When you look back at your career journey to date, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm most, this is going to sound, I'm genuinely most proud of my team and the people I work with, because they're so incredible and they work so well, and they work so well with me that we're able to produce stories that win awards, which is lovely and which resonate with our audience. So I think I'm very proud of my team. I think proud isn't the right word, but I think it's good to have perseverance. Perseverance is what has got me from wanting to do something to doing something, because it's not easy. You know, and all these sort of self-help books and ideals in the world won't get you somewhere if you're not prepared to work really hard for it and keep going. When people say no to me, I just ignore them unless they've got a really good reason for saying no. But if there's not a door there, I will make a door and I will open it. So I think perseverance is something that I'm proud to have inherited from my mother. I can't take credit for it. It comes from my mother. So I think, yes, perseverance and being able to work with people, I think, is a good quality to have as well.
And we're kindred spirits there, Vanessa, and I can just definitely hear that energy coming from you. The reality is that the beauty is in the work, right? And sometimes it's mundane, boring work, yes, but that's what leads to the exciting, fun opportunities down the line.
Exactly.
Excellent. Vanessa, what next for you and your business? Are there any projects in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Yes. So apart from obviously carrying on, reaching out to companies, we have a feature film in very early development. Judy and I. Yes, I'm so excited. I'm so excited about it. Judy and I have just started working on the script. The script is in development, so we're very, very, very excited about that. I think it could be very good. So we've got that, and then obviously we need to finish shooting Small Talk, and then I have other things I want that I always have ticking away in my mind. I've always got something on the go. So, but the feature film is the next thing that we're getting quite excited about. Yes.
Oh, that's brilliant. As we start to wrap up, I'd like to ask you a few quick fire questions that our listeners are always interested in. So, Vanessa, what do you do to relax outside of the office?
I'm not sure I do. I love walking. I love walking because it empties your mind, and I suppose this isn't really relaxing. This is really subliminal working. But I walk, and then I get ideas in my head, which I kind of walk and stew around and walk. So I do love walking, and I think we're particularly lucky where we are, that it's just such a beautiful area to be able to do that with the river and everything. So walking, I do. I have dogs, lots of dogs. So I walk them, and I do I watch films, obviously, because that's my bit of research, but that's also relaxing. So walking and watching films.
And on that theme, I'm definitely keen to explore some of the recommendations you have on two fronts, really. So firstly, are there any books that you have recently read that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yes, well, I'm halfway through again because I started reading this about 4 years ago. I'm halfway through, probably a third of the way through, a book called The Goldfinch by, I think it's Donna Tartt, which I think is going to be excellent, but I can't say because I haven't finished reading it yet. But I would recommend starting to read that, because she has a really beautiful writing style. So that's the one I'm reading at the moment. Yeah. I also love The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks, which is incredible. And my 23-year-old daughter is currently reading that and loving it. So I would really recommend that as well. Completely different, but an excellent, excellent book. Yeah.
Are there any movies or TV shows that you've recently watched that you would recommend to our listeners?
Well, I consume anything that's Scandinavian. Because they shoot so beautifully, and their characters are not created on the basis of aesthetics. It's not full of like very beautiful people. They're full of very interesting people. They always cast really well. So I consume, the sort of virtual box sets of Scandinavian, and I always watch the original ones with the subtitles. So The Bridge, for example, is absolutely excellent. I also love watching independent films. So one I watched recently, which a friend of mine made, is called A Serial Killer's Guide to Life, and it's available to watch. I think it's either Amazon or somewhere like that. And I don't like horror. I don't watch horror, but it's not horror. It's very clever, and I would really recommend watching it. A Serial Killer's Guide to Life, because it's a very clever little film. I loved it. And there's also a little short film, which I would recommend having a look at as well, which is called, it's quite old. It's called Sign Language. It's just up on YouTube, I think. Sign Language by a filmmaker called Oscar Sharp. And it's an absolute gem. It's a very positive little sort of 8-minute watch if people are looking for that, and who isn't right now. And very relevant themes of connecting and human connection. And it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous little film. So I would highly recommend that as well, Sign Language.
I'm a big movie fan myself, Vanessa, and those two tips have definitely gone on my to-watch list, so I appreciate it. Finally, where can people go to find out more about you and your business?
So we're everywhere on social media. So we're on Twitter at 9 Yards Films. We're on Facebook, 9 Yards Films. We have a website also called 9 Yards Films. And I'm on Twitter at vbaileyactor. And I'm pretty much everywhere else on social media if you want to have a look. LinkedIn as well. So we're not hard to find.
And for the benefit of our listeners, I'll make sure that I add these resources to the show notes. Vanessa, thank you for joining us here on the Inside Kingston podcast. It's been a pleasure getting to know your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
That wraps up another episode of the Inside Kingston podcast. Make sure to check out our guests' website, pay them a visit, and help spread the word about what they're doing. If you have any questions or know someone who should be a guest on the show, please feel free to get in touch. I would also love it if you could go to iTunes and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. We work hard to bring on some great guests, and getting a review from you is one way to help the podcast rate well on iTunes so that others can find and enjoy the show too. Thanks for listening.